Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And we are back doing another ranking. And a couple of weeks ago, we did our ranking of classic rom-coms and got a lot of feedback, particularly from my friend Jen and her parents. And I got a lot of feedback from that. And I think something we might revisit again. It was a lot of fun. But we are today going to talk about rom-coms from the 60s and 70s because the previous one was everything before 1960, and now we are talking about just these two decades, and it's pretty interesting. So we want to hear what you have to say, and I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and Terry's here.
Hi,
How are you feeling?
I'm pretty good. This list almost broke me, but
Yeah,
I'm
it was really
this one was
hard.
hard. This one was hard because I haven't seen a few famous ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because I haven't seen a lot of romantic comedies from this period. I've seen a lot of the dramas.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am struggling with it, and I think I'm probably going to leave out a few important ones, but
Yeah, it's the same for me. It's a very weird list. This is a like dark, kind of strange, twisted list. And
yeah.
with some movies that are, I don't know. And so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what you have on your list. And yeah, there's some that I haven't seen. I really wanted to get to the Heartbreak Kid, but I had a little bit of trouble finding it, and so I just didn't end up getting to watch it. And yeah, and there's I didn't end up putting any of Doris Day's movies on my list, and maybe it's just because I know that from this era, she was in a very dark place, and she was having to make a lot of movies because her manager basically screwed her over,
Yeah.
and she had to do these movies, and so they're not like bad, but they're not great anyway.
Not her
So
strongest, yeah.
yeah, so it's just sort of a weird time period for romantic comedies, and it was a time when they were trying to do a lot more sort of darker themed movies like the Married Woman or Kramer versus Kramer, or like Bonnie and Clyde, sort of these movies with Chinatown, these movies with uh women that were in sort of darker places. There weren't the bubbly rom-coms. It just wasn't as much during this time.
More realistic to a
Hmm.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, let's dive in. And I did keep with my one actress per movie rule. Did you for this
I think for
last
the
time?
most part, yes. Not
Yeah.
for the actor though.
Okay.
But for the actress, yes, I believe so.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, except for one, but this it in the same movie with the actor. Well.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, let's dive in. What is your number 12?
All right, my number 12 is a very dysfunctional marriage, a Billy Wilder film, Kiss Me Stupid from
Oh,
1964. It stars Dean Martin, Kim Novak, and Ray Walston. So Kim
I've never
Novak.
seen this.
Oh, for anybody who wants to check it out, it is on Amazon Prime. Um, if you have it. So
Uh-huh.
Ray Walston and Kim Novak are a married couple. He is a piano teacher. He writes songs. He is incredibly jealous. And every time a guy passes in front of his wife, he has these fantasies and delusions that she's cheating on him. He's forever worried about it. So right off the start, you're like, why is she married to this guy? Dean Martin is playing sort of a version of himself called the Dino, and he's sex craved, and he's a womanizer, and he happens to be driving through the town, and Ray Walton is called Orville. Him and his friends sort of sabotage him for him to stay behind in the town so they could try to sell him a song, right? Because he's going to appear on TV. but he's so afraid that he's going to seduce his wife that they hires a questionable lady from a questionable place in town to pretend to be his wife. He causes a fight, kicks his wife out, has this lady. Then he gets drunk and he starts singing this romantic song that he wrote for his wife, and he kicks Dean Martin out, and the questionable lady named Polly and them end up together. Meanwhile, Dino goes to the place where Polly works, and that's where the wife, Kim Novak, is, drinking in sorrows. And he thinks that she's actually Polly because she's notorious in that town. And of course, she's a big fan of Dino. She gets seduced by him. She figures out this whole thing of what her husband does eventually. And then he's worried that she's going to divorce him until he starts to watch Dino's special, and he's singing his song, because at the end of the day, his wife convinced Dino to buy and sing her husband's song, and it ends with "Kiss Me Stupid," where she tells him. And it's hysterically, it's funny because the performances of the actors make it work. But it is a dysfunctional relationship, and a lot of rom-coms of this era are kind of dysfunctional.
Yes.
And I think I like this movie only because it was very notorious when it came out, because everybody criticized it for being too vulgar, and how it was destroying society and making the youth, making them go the wrong way,
What's it called
So
again?
I find that it's such a tame movie. There's a lot of innuendo and suggestive stuff, but you don't see anything. And it's just so funny how people thought this movie was so vulgar and it was killing society.
What's it called again?
Kiss Me Stupid.
Oh, I've never even heard of it. I can't believe there's Billy Idol.
I think it's
Billy...
like a kind of, it's a Billy Wilder movie. I think it's kind of his lesser known now. It's not perfect. It's a black and white movie too.
Huh.
So, it's 1964, so it's straddling old
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood, new Hollywood of the 60s. But it's really funny. Just Ray Walston is just so, the minute he turns, what he does to this poor little boy that he's teaching piano, he's like a teenager. He goes, "You deviant teenager, you want my wife." And it's like ridiculous. He is so jealous that he's practically ruining his life, and
That sounds really good.
yeah, I would have left him though. This is another questionable relationship and needs therapy and stuff, but
yeah. Well, my number 12 is one that I've grown to appreciate more in the last couple of years. And it's Grease is my number 12. I think for a long time it really bothered me, the ending, and I still do have some issues with it, but
right.
I do think that there is something to the fact that she does change for herself. She tells Frenchie that she isn't confident, she wants help. And so her transformation isn't only about Danny, and he does also change for her, which I do appreciate. That he's wearing the Letterman's jacket and he's getting kind of harassed by the guys, and he's doing that for her. And so I think there's more nuance than I gave it credit to for a long time. But the bops are just unbelievable. Totally. And of course, great chemistry, even if they obviously don't look even close to being in high school. And yeah, I mean, it's just a fun, iconic movie with great songs.
Yeah. I almost put this on my list, but I was like, oh, I had this on the musicals, and I was trying really hard not to repeat, but I agree with you.
I do have I have one other repeat.
Yeah, but it was hard not to. Yeah. I was trying hard not to, but it was like, but yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't have it on my on
no,
my
you
list.
Didn't. No.
On from musicals. I remember you did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just so many catchy songs.
Yeah, so many.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Couldn't help it.
All right. What's your number 11?
It's an Italian film. It's Marriage Italian Style, that from 1964. That stars Sophia Loren and Marcello Mastroianni. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that came out right.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a very dysfunctional relationship and not healthy at all. But these actors have such chemistry with each other. and it was so much fun to watch. But basically, they meet during World War II during the bombing. And how these flashbacks are hysterical because they're playing like 17 and 28 and they do not, they look so much older. But anyway, he meets Sophia Loren at a house of dispute, and she's 17. And it just shows their love affair throughout the years. And now that they're older, basically she becomes his official mistress. She has a place that he rents out. She works in one of his bakeries, but he falls in love with a woman who's half his age, who's a cashier at one of his places, and he wants to marry her. So Sophia Loren fakes like she's dying, saying, "My one wish is that you marry me." And he believes she's dying, and they get married. And he's outraged when he finds out that it's not true, and he gets it annulled. But Sophia Loren tells him that she did it for the sake of her three sons, so they would be legitimate and not illegitimate. And he doesn't really care about her sons because he doesn't agree with her questionable lifestyle, even though he was mainly responsible for that. But she does say that one of the children is biologically his son. She will not tell him who it is. She gives him a clue, but he becomes obsessed with it, trying to figure out which one of the three sons is his. And he never really does figure that out. But during this whole thing, he falls madly in love again with Sophia Loren and realizes that they should always be together. And so they do end up together, and he does sort of adopt or give his name to all three of their sons. So they'll have an inheritance. They're not illegitimate anymore. They'll have a place in society. And it's really sweet when he does that, but he's a terrible guy, This is not a relationship that you would root for in real life, but you can't help it because they're just these two beautiful actors with such great chemistry, and they work so well off each other. And the shenanigans that she puts him through is kind of funny, but he deserves all of this, But
Yeah. I feel like I've seen this.
you might
But
have, this was a big film when it came out. It was nominated. Sophia Loren was nominated for Best Actress. It was nominated for Best Foreign Film. It was one of the most popular Italian movies that year that it came out, both in Italy and in America. Like everyone loved it here, and
yeah. I just didn't think about it on my list, but it's been a while since I saw it.
Right. I was like, I need to get a little international flair up in here in my list. But it is a movie that I don't normally think about as a romantic comedy, but it is because, it's got very European sensibilities to it and humor.
Yeah.
But it's because mainly he's a terrible person here. And why Sophia Loren loves him, I'll never understand fully, but she gets her justice in the end. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, I guess, terrible people, my pick for 11 is about two terrible people, but it's Taming of the Shrew.
Oh my gosh, it's on my list too. Yes.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes.
Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton.
Yes.
And obviously there are problematic aspects of this Shakespearean play. But it was, I think, one of the first ever real, or at least that I'm aware of, real sort of wager romantic comedy. That's a trope that you have. I'm talking about play that they make this bet that can he woo this shrew. And the thing I guess that makes this work is that both of them are so terrible and
they're terrible individuals.
Each other and the fighting and obviously the chemistry that they had as a couple translates here to this movie. And it is pretty unrelenting as far as just like how
wonderful.
Both of them are equally strong and violent, both of them. So you don't get the sense of like, oh, this is I don't know. I never feel that like worried for her because she's so strong and like equally violent. I don't know. Like, and so the back and forth, the banter, the repartee, I think really works, and it's this definitely enemies to lovers, that's for sure. And it's well made. Franco Zeffirelli, it was made beautiful films. and just the spark, I can understand why modern viewers might struggle with this play and the story,
Right.
because she is somewhat treated as sort of something to be, bet over, and
Fixed too as well. Like
submissive
yeah.
to him. But I still think there's enough here to appreciate and enjoy.
She's almost got Stockholm syndrome at the end.
Yeah, kind of. I can see that.
Like I've heard about that, but it's a beautiful looking production. It has great
Yeah.
costumes, and it's close to the Shakespeare play.
Mhm.
You
Very
know,
close. Yeah.
yeah, because some people don't like some people when they're adapting Shakespeare don't use all of the language or change things up so we better understand it. And they keep it pretty close. And I just there is something, and I think it's because Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton have such great chemistry that you just enjoy them fighting. And I
Mhm.
can't help but think that they were like that in real life. There was a relationship like that in real life. Like,
Yeah, I think
I don't
there's
know if he
some
was eating a turkey leg in front of her like that, but I felt like
there is like a certain degree of voyeurism about this one that you feel like you're
right,
getting, because
totally.
they were
Yeah.
so volatile as a couple that you
Yeah.
feel like you're almost getting an inside look at
True.
them. So what do you have next?
Well, my number 10 is a Doris Day movie. I struggled
Mhm.
as well with you, but I added this one in because it has Cary Grant and Edith Head did the costumes for it. It's That Touch of
Mhm.
Pink.
Yeah.
This is another movie where I feel like it's a very old Hollywood with a toe dipped into the new Hollywood of the 60s. But
Yeah.
basically it's Doris Day is just a regular girl trying to find trying to find work, and she encounters Cary Grant, whose car ran over her dress, and she's about to give him the 2-4, but like the minute she sees him, of course, she's melting. And it's the whole entire thing is whether she wants to sleep with him, and then that's all his thing because he's a womanizer, and all the shenanigans that happen when she doesn't end up sleeping him, like getting hives, falling
Mhm.
off a balcony. You know?
Yeah.
And Dean Martin's just not Dean Martin, I'm sorry, Cary Grant is just so exasperated with all her shenanigans, and that means he's in love.
Mhm.
But
Right.
the best part of this movie is his a co his employee, Gig Young, who just is obsessed with seeing this man get taken down a bit because he's handsome and he's rich and all this other stuff. And he keeps calling a psychiatrist who thinks he's gay, which is a little silly, at the time. But and then Audrey Meadows, who was Alice from the Honeymooners,
Uh-huh.
as her roommate slash best friend. So
Yeah.
give her props. I love Audrey Meadows, and we also get like a little small role of Darren number 2 from Bewitched in this movie, Dick Sargent.
Oh, really?
And I had forgotten he was in this because I rewatched this movie to make sure it would end up on my list because I was having trouble picking a Doris Day movie. And when he picked, I'm sorry, when he popped up, I was like, oh, it's Darren number 2. I had forgotten he was in there as a guy he's a honeymooner. Cary Grant gives him
Yeah.
advice, but
It makes
Cary
me
Grant
think
and
of
Doris
the
Day,
the
yeah.
Bewitched movie when he's like, "Do you know there were two
Oh.
Darrets?"
But they play
Yeah.
off each other so well. They're sexy together, and I just love her when
Yeah.
she's at the hotel and she thinks everybody knows that what they're gonna get to eventually, and she just keeps picturing them like surround on top of a bed everywhere they go. That bed, because she thinks
That's
everybody
true.
knows that I'm gonna sleep with him. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that one is pretty fun. Pretty fun.
yeah,
Well, I should mention, if you are listening to these ranking episodes and thinking these women are out of their minds,
nuts. Yeah.
then then you should join the Patreon and you can be a part of these ranking episodes. We'll share some of our patrons picks. I try to always post what our next ranking will be in the Patreon group, and you get a chance to add your picks, and it's a lot of fun. So take a look at that. But my number 10 is one I struggled a little bit because I don't like love it, but it's very influential and it's good. I like it. It's just hard with Woody Allen nowadays. But Annie Hall, I put it number 10. I mean, it was a game changer. I mean,
Yeah,
one of the few rom-coms to actually win Best Picture.
right.
The way the banter is written, the commentary throughout is just great, and obviously the fashion. Diane Keaton's so iconic in the film. Um, there's so many movies that are owed a debt of gratitude to Annie Hall. I mean, especially When
Yeah.
Harry Met Sally, with not. I mean, that is so similar to Annie Hall.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's iconic. What are you gonna do? I felt like it had to be on
Yeah.
this list.
I have this on my list a little higher.
Hmm.
I should warn everybody that I do have two Woody Allen movies on this
Oh,
on my
okay.
list, but
Uh-huh.
I wasn't looking because I know people have feelings about Woody Allen, but
Sure.
I was setting that all aside because people have various, you know,
Hmm.
feelings about that. I set that all aside and was just focusing on the film. And I do have Annie Hall a little bit higher on the list because I just think Diane Keane is
Yeah.
so charming, and I do like that we
I
see the beginning, the middle, and the end of a relationship,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that
Well,
Annie Hall doesn't just like stay with him.
yeah.
Annie Hall, like Annie doesn't stay with him. She has a life
Yeah.
after him that she's happy with,
I
and that's
think
what I
though,
would like about that.
yeah, I do too. And I think that the problem with Woody Allen is just like that his shtick is kind of become outdated. And so that hurts sort of the
Yeah,
overall
yeah,
enjoyment for
that's
me,
true. Yeah,
more so
yeah.
than like him being a creepy dude. And it, so
It is
it
sort of outdated slightly. Yeah, like
Yeah,
some of the
I mean,
stuff is
if I was
outdated.
just
Yeah.
picking on the quality of the movie and not it being a rom-com, I would probably put Manhattan over Annie. Not probably. I would definitely put Manhattan over Annie Hall. I think it's genuinely a lot funnier, but it's not a good romance at all. I mean,
No, no.
he's literally dating a 16-year-old, so it's just not,
Yeah,
I
17-year-old.
yeah,
I should,
and
I'll just say it right now. I also have that on my list.
okay.
It's coming up.
But
But I will have an explanation of
okay.
why it is
But
why
I
I
love
chose it.
in Manhattan the whole segment on overrated. That
Yes,
that whole
yeah,
conversation is hilarious. So I do think that that's genuinely, and it is. I think it's a better movie, but I
yeah,
think that Annie Hall is the better romance for me.
yes, totally.
So what do you have? What do you
My
have at
number
9?
nine, yeah, my number nine is The Taming of the Shrew.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
good. Good.
So
Well, my number 9 is maybe obscure. I don't know how popular this movie is. Number 9, I have A New Leaf. This is by director Elaine May. And it's kind of a weird movie to have on a rom-com list because most of the movie he wants to kill her. Walter Matthau. It's a dark comedy, like so many in this era. He is like a playboy guy who just kind of leeches off other people, and he basically finds out that he has to marry a rich woman in order to keep up his lifestyle. And
oh, how
and
hard.
he meets Elaine May, who's this botanist, who's like a super nerd, and he is basically planning and scheming for most of their relationship about how he's going to kill her, so that he can inherit
The
everything.
audacity.
And but then she's just so darn charming and so darn sweet that he actually ends up saving her life and realizing like, oh, I actually love this person. And so it
Of
is
course.
a dark comedy, but yeah, it's really good, I think.
I've never seen this one. I have heard of it though, but I've never seen it.
Mm. Yeah, we did it
I'm gonna put it
for
on my to watch list. Yeah.
we did it for the Criterion Project show that I do with my friend.
Ho, ho, ho! We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcasts, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
Let's see. What do you have at 8?
My 8, I went with an Elvis movie, and it's not the one everybody thinks it is. It's Blue Hawaii from 1961. Now, Elvis has a lot of these frothy rom-coms, but I love Blue Hawaii. It's one of his 3 Hawaii films. I love it because Angela Lansbury plays his mom, and she has the most absurd Southern accent. And what's funny is Elvis was 26 when he did this movie, and Angela Lansbury is only 10 years older than he is. So I find that just so funny. And it is kind of a time capsule of certain places in Hawaii too. But essentially, Elvis comes home from the army and he meets up with his sweetheart. And, his father's a very successful businessman and he wants him to take over, his business. But Elvis wants to be a tour guide because he loves Hawaii so much, and he's lived there for so many years. So him and his girlfriend sort of start, they work for, to do tour guides, and Elvis kind of gets work for a teacher and her students and taking them places, except one of those students falls madly in love with Elvis and shows up on in his room, in his hotel room, with a borrowed negligee that she borrowed from somebody else. And the shenanigans of him trying to get her out of the hotel room without anybody noticing. And there's a whole big hoopla with his girlfriend over it. And then, the girl is heartbroken and he's got to go save her. And it's so silly. And of course, it is a musical, but Elvis is really the only one singing. And then there's this beautiful wedding at the end, which is really nice. And it's a frothy Elvis movie. He's at the height of being Elvis, of the height of his handsomeness, the height of his singing ability. He's young, fresh-faced, and it's just stupid fun.
Yeah. I've actually never seen an Elvis movie. Maybe I should have before making this list.
No, I get it because I think everybody talks about Viva Las Vegas with Anne Margaret. Everybody else talks about that one. That one's okay. But I do think that Elvis movies, because he was forced to make so many of them, they got less and less in quality. And I think they kind of fell out of favor. But I think everything is with the Elvis movie. I think Elvis has resurfaced his movies, more of his music, not just all the famous songs we know, like some obscure songs of his as well, have all coming back into the light. And I feel like people are discovering Elvis and having Elvis fever all over again. Which I appreciate.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because there's another Elvis movie coming out this year.
Oh, that one's based, that's
by Priscilla.
This is really funny because that's based on Priscilla's biography that she wrote years ago. But there is a TV miniseries that was already made into a miniseries.
Oh, really?
And Me. Yeah. I remember watching it. And I do remember that people didn't like it because it wasn't kind to Elvis. And I was like, well, Elvis had his demons.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see because Sofia Coppola, I think, is the director.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, but they couldn't use any Elvis songs. The estate didn't.
Oh, really?
No, they have to sing it themselves. They don't use it. They have someone else. They can't.
Oh, that sucks.
which was so funny because they're all out there promoting, Elvis, and then we get Priscilla and Elvis, and they're like, "No, you can't do it." So it's really funny to me.
mhm. Well, my number 8 is a very strange movie. But it's very iconic for this time period. It is Harold and Maude. Is my number 8. It is a movie about a relationship between a young man and a 79-year-old woman
All righty then.
named Maude. And Harold, the young man, is obsessed with death. He tries to kill himself multiple times. This is a very dark movie, very dark comedy. But he meets this woman, Maude, who is a Holocaust survivor. She's she has a very dry wit, dry sense of humor. And they bond and they fall in love. And he even has he turns his parents, they were embarrassed by him, and they give him a Porsche, and he turns it into a hearse. And so he has this hearse.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And it has an incredible, one of the most iconic soundtracks in any movie ever. Cat Stevens songs, so good. And you really do feel this bond between this strange couple, that they do kind of understand each other. They both have sort of the same look on life, and the same look on about art and music and death and all this stuff. And so it actually works. It's actually charming despite it being very dark. And it's one of those movies that I feel like is sort of a classic college film fan movie that you discover when you're trying to dig a little bit deeper, when you're a cinemaphile in college, and it's like, ooh, this is different. This is strange, and you almost sort of wear it as a badge of honor, like, oh, I like this weird, quirky, weird, different film. And so I think that's why it's a true example of a cult classic, because that term is batted around in ridiculous, like movies that were incredibly successful and not like cult classics at all. They use that, like I even saw the other day someone described Avatar as a cult. I'm like, what is wrong with you?
No,
like,
then it's made too much money. Everybody knows what Avatar is.
Everybody knows that. And but this is a classic, I think, example of a cult classic. And
this is one of those movies I'm always embarrassed to say that I haven't watched yet. I was never sold on the premise, so I've been dragging my feet to watch it, but I really should watch it.
It's very weird. And I don't know. I do think it's one that you have to be introduced to it at the right time. I'd be interested to know what you think.
Yeah, I'm gonna seek it out and watch it, because I was like, I should just get over it. Like, let me just check this out. Because after a while you never get to see something and you're like, I'll survive, right? And then everybody's always talking about it.
Well, and it almost can become sort of part of your personality, that like
that's true. Like,
go long enough without seeing something like Star Wars or something like with these iconic franchises, then it sort of becomes part of your personality in a weird way.
I mean, I haven't gotten that, obtuse about it. Like, oh, I've never watched it yet. It's just something that I should watch it. I don't know why I haven't gotten to it yet. I could have watched it for this, but I was like, let me watch this one first. So like, I'm always pushing it back for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I'm going to make it a mission before the year's out to watch this movie.
And I certainly, I mean, especially with the way that it, handles suicide and I think it's definitely not for everybody. There are parts of it that could be quite triggering for people. So I guess know what you're getting into when you watch it. But what do you have at 7?
My number 7 is a Western. It's McLintock. Oh, I'm sorry. McLintock. McLintock.
Yeah, I didn't
It
even know
stars,
that this had like a romantic element to it until
yes,
last time.
it's a version of Taming of the Shrew,
Mhm.
essentially. It's John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. So
Yeah.
John Wayne and his wife
Oh.
are estranged. Yeah, they've re-teamed up for this. So John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara are estranged. She's moved to the city to be closer to their daughter, who's like in college, and they have been separated for 2 years. And he's basically back at his home, at his ranch. And she comes back. The daughter's coming back after college to visit her dad, and she's coming with her daughter back. And she comes off the train. She is high and falutin, and everybody's like, "What has the city done to this lady?" Right? And
Uh-huh.
she's like, "I want to divorce because I'm so much more sophisticated." And he's like, "Nope, ain't gonna happen." Now, this also, the daughter's engaged, and the fiance is coming at a later date, but John Wayne hires a guy, like a young kid, to like work at his ranch, and he hires the kid's mother as a as his maid at the house, and she's a Hispanic lady. I
Mhm.
believe, yeah. I think she's
Yeah.
a Mexican character. But the minute Maureen O'Hara comes in, she's having an affair with the maid. She's super jealous. She makes that lady's life miserable. And all she's doing is cooking, because John Wayne goes, "My God, she's a great cook, and I'm here by myself," right? Meanwhile, the fiance of the daughter comes, and both he and Maureen O'Hara are like, "No, this guy is no bueno," right? Like, we don't like him. But there's a side plot with the town. This is unbelievable. So, there are like there's crimes happening and violence happening, and somebody gets killed, and the town is blaming it on the Indians. And John Wayne is like, "No, we've lived with the Indians peacefully for so long. Think twice about it. There's got to be more about it." So there's this bigoted nature of the town, but they end up resolving this. The town gets into one giant brawl. And that's when the daughter realizes she's in love with the other kid who works for her dad, and the fiance stops off. But in the middle of this brawl, John Wayne decides to chase Maureen O'Hara, and he's like, "Get rid of your uppity ways." And it does have him putting her on on his knee and smacking her behind.
Mhm.
So if people don't like that, I don't think it's done mainly for the laughs. It is a movie that probably hasn't aged well either. It's based on The Taming of the Shrew, so it's a very much that type of aspect. But John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara have such great chemistry, and she's so stuck up. But the thing is that she pretends to be stuck up so she can live in the city, because her real persona slips out every now and then. And that poor maid, what she does to that lady, thinking she's having an affair with John Wayne, and she's like, "How dare you like insult me by living with another woman?" Meanwhile, she left him, and it's like, it's really funny.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't seen this, but I have to say that of all of our picks from the classics rom-com that got pushback from, particularly, like I said, my friend Jen and her parents, and then my friend Sanford, it was The Quiet Man. People were said, "No, it's not a comedy." I am shocked, because I think when you have a long sequence where he literally is like dragging her
It's funny.
across
Yes, there's
the grounds, and she's flailing about, and like extended over the top fights. Like I just
He-
think there's no question to me that it is a comedy.
the brawl with the brother goes from house to house, the pub to pub. I view it as a comedy. It's on the list of rom-coms out there, people. Like, if you Google up some rom-coms of the of that particular decade, it is on the list.
Yeah. I
So
like, of all the ones that I thought that we would get pushback from, that was not one of them. To me, it is clearly a romantic comedy.
I think it has to do with John Wayne. He did
Mhm.
very few romantic
Yeah.
comedies, and I don't think people have. And also, that one was directed by John Ford, and I don't think
Mhm.
people look at John Ford and John Wayne as people who were in comedies.
And like, all comedies have drama, and all dramas have
Oh, yeah.
comedies. but have comedic moments. But it's just funny to me because I like you don't have like the fight sequences that are so silly and so madcap. Like you practically hear the like Benny Hill music going on during it, you know.
Oh, for real.
I don't know. Very, very I stand by our picks, that's for sure.
I do too. I stand by, but I can't I do understand that argument, but I'm on your side. Because we both had it on our list.
Yes. Well, my number 7 is The Goodbye Girl. And I actually just watched this for the first time as part of this AFI Passions project that I've been doing for the patrons. And if you're interested in hearing exclusive weekly reviews of with the AFI Passions list, then join the Patreon, because every week I do one. I review one, and The Goodbye Girl was on there. And Richard Dreyfuss actually won an Oscar for it. He's really good in it. I don't think that they have like amazing chemistry, him and the police, but it is very charming, this movie. It does feel like a play. You can tell it was a play first.
Neil Simon play.
Mm-hmm. And it's Marsha Mason, and it's very simple.
She lost to. She was nominated for the Oscar too. She lost to Diane Keaton for Annie Hall.
Oh, really? That makes sense. But she plays the single mom who, through various contrivances, is forced to share this apartment with this Richard Dreyfuss guy, who's this young idealistic actor, and it's very cute. It's very charming. I think any Hallmarkie will love this movie.
This one's also on my list.
Mm-hmm.
I recently did watch it too for the first time, trying to fill in the gaps, and I did love it. I loved the little kid in it, and it's like enemies to lovers, sort of that type of trope, but not so much on that. But the constant banter between them and the bickering and the whole play that he puts on, the third play, like
and I like how they didn't try to sort of defend that this was a good play.
No,
everybody knows, including him, that it sucks.
It sucks, yeah. It just like, I was like, oh no. And I think it's totally making fun of those particular artists who think they're, reinventing the wheel. So I thought that was a good chuckle on making fun of like those type of people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a really good movie, and I kind of feel bad that I only discovered it recently. Like I hadn't seen it earlier.
Yeah. I know, me too. And honestly, on the passions list, there aren't that many rom-coms. There's a lot of the other kind of passion. And so, I'm watching like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and, movies like that.
Pizza Date on the Roof is great in the rain.
Mm-hmm. So it was refreshing. Be like, oh, this is a rom-com.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you have at 6?
My number 6 is Let's Make Love. Marilyn Monroe and I cannot pronounce this man's name. Oh gosh, he's a French dude. Hold on, I think I have. Let me see if I can put it up to the mic. I have. Give me the pronunciation so I don't butcher it. Hold on, let me see. Hopefully it goes through. If it would just press now it doesn't want to work on my phone. This is hysterical. It's Yves. Okay, hold on. Let me put it up. Yves Montand. I had to Google it to make sure I pronounced it correctly, because I knew I was going to butcher it. He was a French actor. Tony Randall's in this movie too. This was Marilyn's last musical, and she only completed filming one more film, The Misfits, before she died. She passed away, and this film was nominated by George Cukor. Basically, it's this guy. He's a billionaire, and he learns billionaire playboy, and he learns that this off-Broadway play is satirizing him. He's incensed about it, and he goes to the play, like to the theater, to watch them rehearse, and that's when he spots Marilyn, and she's singing the very iconic number, My Heart Belongs to Daddy, and she's wearing that sweater, that purple sweater with the black stockings. It's a very iconic image of Marilyn. and he's completely smitten. And the director thinks he's an actor in the play, and he pretends to be. So he hires Bing Crosby and Gene Kelly to teach him how to sing and dance, and they're playing themselves in this movie. So he can pull off this role in the play. And he even goes so far as to save the play to keep up this ruse because he's fallen in love with Marilyn. And then he finally tells her, like, listen, Marilyn, I'm this real guy. I've been lying to you. And she thinks that he's gone too method and needs to see a psychiatrist because he's too into his method acting. And eventually she's like, no, you were telling the truth. She's upset, of course, at him. They have this great reunion, this great kiss, which is hot in the elevator. And it's not one of Marilyn's like most popular or well-known like films, because it comes towards the end of her life. But there is something sweet about it that I like. And I know that nobody liked making this movie. It was a troubled production. This movie actually had to stop due to, this is really funny, because the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild were actually on strike both at the same time when this movie was being made, and they had to halt production. And we're in the middle of the, them being on strike together again. So it's, I chuckled at that. Let's Make Love.
Huh.
This isn't going to win over everybody. It's like a particular flavor, but I just think that they're both good. And Marilyn, looks great in this movie. And she apparently, like, even though it was a troubled production, she was okay through most of this production. And it's kind of like her last musical, her last romance that she did. Because her last movie is The Misfits. And then, she gets fired from the last movie she's making, which was a remake of My Favorite Wife, and then she dies. So this is like, just
so she
not
was
a swan
going to be
song
in
of sorts,
Move Over,
but yeah.
Darling.
It was
Instead of
called
Doris Day?
something else. Yeah, it was called something else at that point. I'd have to look it up because Dean Martin was in that one. You can
Okay.
actually, there's 30 minutes of surviving footage, I believe, that they put together, which you can view. She was fired because she was going through issues of that movie, and she was late, but people were saying she was giving a great performance. She was a little nude in that one. There was a lot of she had her back exposed and swimming nude in a pool. So there's a lot of, you can find pictures and scenes of them recording with Dean Martin and it's called Something's Got to Give. So yeah, they've amassed the 30 minutes. Yeah. And I think she had trouble too with that movie because she had children that were the age of the two children she lost in real life. So when she had her miscarriages, and so that triggered something. This was towards the end of her life. She wasn't in that great of a place. But if you guys could get to see the last, those 30 minutes, it is something. But yeah. And Dean Martin, that would have been amazing if we had ever gotten to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they reworked that movie later with Doris Day.
Well, my number 6 is Heaven Can Wait. At number 6.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, this movie, you have Warren Beatty. He directed it, and it's I think it's a remake.
Yeah.
Of another. Yeah.
I believe
anyway,
so. Yes.
Yeah. It's about he plays a man who dies, goes up to heaven. It turns out he was taken by the angel too soon, and so he really had more time left, and so he gets a second chance, but it's in another body, and because his body has been cremated, and so now he has to go back and try to live this new life as this murdered millionaire who Charles Grodin is the scummy guy who's trying to murder this millionaire, and then Julie Christie plays the love interest in it. I haven't seen it in a while, I have to be honest, but it's really cute.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm not that big a fan of Warren Beatty. So I've seen this one, but it didn't make my list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recently for the AFI project I watched Reds, and that movie is just a nothing.
Oh
Nothing.
yeah.
I think. I mean, that to me is like so classic of the kind of movie that gets nominated for Best Picture that then is like completely forgettable. Completely
Yes.
forgettable. Yeah.
Hey, this is Jen Johans, host of the podcast Watch with Jen, which delivers a steady stream of great movie recommendations, thoughtful career deep dives, and first rate conversations with film critics, authors, actors, journalists, filmmakers, and more. You can find Watch with Jen wherever you get your podcasts or hear us first at our Patreon at patreon.com/filmintuition.
5.
My number 5. This is where I put Manhattan.
Okay. Yeah.
And like I said, just strictly thinking about the movie,
Doesn't she turn 17 in the movie?
No, she turns 18 in the movie.
Oh, I was thinking of 17.
Yeah, she's
Okay.
17. Now, I kind of like this movie because, this is like one of a blind spot, so I recently watched this one. I like how it's all failed relationships. These are terrible people, terrible relationships. Not terrible people, but terrible relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I do know that he dates like a 17-year-old. And today we view that as not cool. The majority of people are like, you're grown, don't date a teenager. But if you go back not too long ago, there were a lot of people who turned a blind eye. Like, to have a grown man date a teenage girl in the 70s is not surprising. So I know like people would watch this film today and be turned off by that aspect, but it wasn't like that was being done quite openly at that time, whether you agreed with it or not. I just think people were more.
It hurts. It makes it less of a romance to me. I think this one I think is more just a comedy. Rather than a romantic comedy.
Yeah, but there's like several romances that all go wrong in that. I get it. Yeah, I get that argument too, but I do think that there's several romances going all on that I made it qualify. I kind of liked it because, all the romances do not end. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, I can see that. And the script is so funny in this. I think it is genuinely funnier, just as far as laughs, than Annie Hall.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like I said, that whole conversation about things being overrated, I think is really good.
Yeah.
And it is, I love Midnight in Paris. That is my favorite Woody Allen film. And that film looks beautiful. But I do think Manhattan is probably his most striking film. It looks, in the black and white, it is beautiful. That's true. It looks great.
And I do love everything that Meryl Streep is doing in this movie by writing that tell-all book. And, because when I was watching this movie, I was like, oh, this hasn't aged well. There's certain elements of it that haven't aged well, even though it was important at the time that it came out and very, forward thinking on certain things. But
I think it's a strange movie to have on the passions list, though. It is not a very passionate movie.
Oh, I wouldn't think so. No, that's strange. But like, I was really starting to think about it. Guys, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. I was an adult by the end of the 90s. But like, I remember girls taking their 30-year-old boyfriends to the prom and nobody said anything. And so I didn't find any of the shenanigans going on in this movie strange for the time. Thankfully, it's not like that. I mean, today they would get super in trouble. Nobody would stand for that. And that's a good thing. Right. That's a good thing. But it is a movie that maybe hasn't held up on the time, but there are generally some really funny moments.
Although you still have these plots in teenage television shows. Almost every teenage show has a plot of the girl.
Yes,
usually sometimes it's a young man with the teacher, the older teacher. Oh, yeah. Even just in Rise of the Pink Ladies, they just had it. Chris McNally was the teacher. I mean, Dawson's Creek, Riverdale, like all these shows.
Pretty Little Liars.
They all do it. It's so weird. I don't understand it.
I think it's still a romance trope. People still like to watch it, and it's very prevalent in vampire stuff, where he's like centuries older than like the teenage, like the vampire. Listen, I love the Vampire Diaries, the TV show, but like they're centuries old, and like the 16-year-old is the most important woman of my life. And I
Right.
don't know,
Yeah.
you've lived over 100 years. Is it? Is it? It's like the greatest joke or the greatest response to Twilight that I've ever heard was, why are these guys still going to high school all the time? Haven't they had enough? Because they
Yeah.
keep going to high school every couple of years, like repeating it. And they were like, the first time is traumatic enough. Why would you keep going back?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right about that.
Well, my number 5 is The Slipper and the Rose. And I feel like this is very underrated as far as Cinderella adaptations. It's not one that you hear about talked about that much. And that's a shame because it's really fun. It's got the
It is
Sherman
fun.
Brothers songs.
Yeah.
And I actually had some people say, well, that's not a romantic comedy. I'm like, it's certainly not a drama. Come on. It counts as a romantic comedy.
I've never thought of it as a romantic comedy. Maybe because it's a Cinderella story. Maybe I just don't associate Cinderella as a rom-com.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, the scene that I remember the most is the beautiful like white fur that she's got on in the carriage ride when she's going to the ball. Like they had some really interesting looks here, and their parents though are hysterical in the film. So there's a lot of fun moments in there. Yeah.
One thing I like is that this, and you can tell this was the 70s. So in this one, she is basically told by the king and queen, like, go leave, we'll send you away because your relationship with the prince will ruin him. Ruin. So she goes into exile and she's like perfectly happy. She still thinks about she thinks about him, but she's like perfectly happy.
I had a love, it didn't work out. I'm all right. Let me put some flowers. Yeah.
But what's refreshing is so he is basically being forced into marrying this other princess, this queen. And he doesn't want to. She does, and the queen doesn't want to marry him, but they're being forced to. And she's told about this and she's like, I want to help the prince. I want to save him from this horrible life of unhappiness, And so then she shows up, and basically the fairy godmother and everybody are like, this law is stupid. Why are they making it? And then I forget who it is ends up marrying the other princess. And so so I kind of like that switch on things that the whole thing with the they go past just the glass slipper, and they have this ending where she's the one who really saves him. And she's the one who decides that she wants to leave this relatively happy existence in order to save her prince, which is cute.
And keep an eye out for some of them wigs. They're really interesting.
And some great, you got the Sherman Brothers songs, who didn't do a whole lot outside of Disney. Of course, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Charlotte's Web, and so there were a few non-Disney projects, but then this was one of them. But you've got a lot of songs, and Once I Was Loved. You have the I Can't Forget the Melody. Just really cute. What Has Love Got to Do with Getting Married? Different songs. So yeah, it's just one I rarely hear anybody talking about, and I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I do think it's kind of obscure now. Every once in a while, if you keep a lookout, TCM does play it. So that's how I first discovered it, because I didn't even know it discovered a couple of years ago. I watched it.
Yeah, it's on a bunch of the streamers. It's on Tubi. It's on Pluto.
That's good.
It's on Peacock. So yeah,
really.
Yeah. So people should watch it. It's I would be shocked if the Hallmarkies didn't love it. So, yeah. What do you have at 4?
My number 4 is Barefoot in the Park.
Yeah. That one was high for me. I debated about that one.
The Robert Redford. It stars Robert Redford, Jane Fonda, Charles Boyer, and Mildred Natwick, who steals
the movie. Yes,
and she
I'm so
was
glad you
nominated.
agree.
Yeah, she was nominated for an Oscar supporting for this movie. I am definitely the Robert Redford of this relationship because he's more reserved and Jane Fonda's more free spirited. But basically, it's they're newlyweds, and I love this gag where they live on the fifth floor, the very top floor of this apartment building that's not great in New York. And every time, there's no elevator, so everyone is always out of breath, always coming up the stairs. They go like, "What do you mean I have to go back down the stairs?" And it's like, it's so funny that just that recurring gag left me in stitches. And I just thought the whole situation and the dinner with Charles Boyer when they go out to the restaurant and it's an old Romanian song and it's like the itsy bitsy spider that she's singing. And Charles Boyer is just so funny in this movie.
Yeah. It just didn't, I have it at 13. It just didn't make my list just because I don't really care about the main couple that much. Like, I am totally invested in, Charles Boyer and Mildred Natwick. And Mildred Natwick, she really does steal this movie.
She does steal this
I had
movie.
never seen it until it was on this AFI Passions list. So I watched it for the first time. And she is so funny and like when she they have this because it's about this new married couple that rent this apartment in way up high, and every time she has to climb those stairs I laugh. And basically Jane Fonda is sort of your free spirited type and Robert Redford is your sort of stuffed shirt, your suit, and how their first year of marriage. So it's good. I agree with you. Mildred Natwick steals the show, and that secondary relationship is great.
I might have recency bias on this one because I just recently saw it for making this list because it was one I had never seen and I just fell in love with it. And the really guy, the guy who sets up their phone, oh my God, you live all the way up here. And this and I just, when the minute I saw him, I yelled, I was like, it's Stan. It's Dorothy's ex-husband from the Golden Girls. So that got me too. Like, I was like, look, it's Stan. The best part is when he's fixing the phone and he's very uncomfortable because there's lots of tension because they're fighting between Robert Redford and Jane Fonda, and he's like trying to fix the phone as quickly as he can to get out of there because the tension is too much for him to handle. He feels so uncomfortable. I just think there's a lot of great like little performances, like side performances in this movie too that make it work.
I agree.
And I think I remember reading somewhere that Robert Redford wasn't too keen on this movie, but when he's drunk at the end and he's sick, he did make me laugh because I haven't seen that many Robert Redford films where he was that sort of silly or light. So it was kind of a really great new discovery for me.
Well, my number 4 is when I had on my musicals list, and it is The Bells Are Ringing. Is on my list, is number 4. I just love this movie. I think it's so funny and she's so good. Judy Holliday, I love her. She's so endearing and just she's an insane person, but like but the fact that he's still like just like what is this person in my house? Like, I don't know.
Well, she's got to like interfere. She's in everybody's business with the phone. Being a phone operator,
and it has so many good songs. My favorite is I'm Going Back. It's just incredible, and The Party's Over is of course iconic. I think they actually have pretty good chemistry. I enjoy it. The whole cast is great. I think that Hallmarkies will really like this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really good. All right, what do you have at 3?
My 3 is where I put Annie Hall. Not perfect. This one stands a bit more the test of time than Manhattan does, but I think Diane Keaton is just so iconic in this role, and she's so good. And I kind of like it, spoilers, I'm sorry, because it's just like I said, it's the beginning, the middle, and the end of a relationship, and it's not. It really doesn't end up being devastating for everybody. We just see, a relationship bloom and then wilt. And I like that about it, because romantic comedies usually end on a good note. And this one doesn't so much, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's true. And the way that it was so frank and honest about Jewish like Jewish characters and Jewish culture, and what a great cast when you've got Colleen Dewhurst, Christopher Walken, Shelley Duvall, Carol Kane.
So many people pop up in this movie. There's a very young Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah. And so it's a good movie. I guess I just wish that the humor held up a little bit better.
No, I get it. Totally, I get it. But
it's not as funny now as it was then.
Yeah, the most relatable part is when they're standing in the movie line and the guy behind them is just in suffering, going, "Well, Fellini, this and that," and you're like, "Oh, that is so relatable." I one time heard a debate on a Jennifer Lopez movie online. To see, back then, kids, you would go to the movie theater and you have to wait online. You couldn't pre-buy your tickets.
Yeah.
And if you got to the line and say, "Hey, can I have 2 tickets or whatever to see this movie?" They'd be like, sold out. You'd have to pick another one close to the time that you're at.
Well, and that's why it's so funny in Manhattan when I forget if it's Fellini or whatever, when they're having the pedantics are having the whole conversation about, "I'm so overrated." Like, it's too bad that Woody Allen had everything that happened, because he would actually, I think, be very funny in the world of Twitter. If obviously, it is what it is. But well,
we'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
My number 3 is the Parent Trap, original Parent Trap. I think that obviously the main emphasis of the story is the 2 girls played by Haley Mills, but I think the Maureen O'Hara, Brian Keith romance is just really good. And I love when she comes and she's like, 16 plastic surgeons major reconstruction job on my face just to look presentable for you.
When he doesn't know that when he comes home and he's got his fiance and he doesn't know that they're back yet or that the kids were switched, and he walks into the bathroom and her brassiere is just hanging over there. It makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Or when she's in Boston and her father slowly goes, "Oh, you're going to go visit him looking like that?" And she's like, "What?" Because she's a little bit more dowdy. And he goes, "What's wrong with my look?" And he goes, "It's a little old." And I just love that.
No, he's like, I admire a woman who can age gracefully.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So it's so much fun.
Really good.
It's so much fun. The remake is also fun.
Yeah, I love the remake. We did me and Marissa did a whole episode of Hallmarkies podcast where we ranked all of because there's actually 5. There's 2. There's a Parent Trap 2, and then there's the Parent Trap 3 and 4, which were actually about triplets.
Oh yeah, the TV movies. I think
Susan was barely in those ones. Susan was in those. And then the remake. So that was fun.
Disney. I once read that Disney was thinking of remaking it, and
it's one of the. It's interesting because rom-coms do have a very good track record when it comes to remakes.
Yeah, for the most part.
You've got Mills, you've got your high societies, you've got your just I don't know, there's something about rom-coms that they, more than other genres, they tend to do pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love Parent Trap in any
Yeah.
form, except for maybe the one the triplets ones aren't strong, but I do love. I mean, really, when you think about it, the whole premise is insane. The
Yeah.
idea that these
Two
parents,
would-
these
yeah,
loving
would
parents would not
split their
tell their
kids.
child that they had a sibling and that their parent was living, and it's
I mean,
absurd.
who makes a decision? You
It's
take one
absurd.
baby, I take the other baby, and they'll
Yeah.
meet up in a couple of years at camp. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, but it's charming.
It
So,
is very charming.
and I can always relate to Vicky/Meredith, depending on which version you're watching.
Yeah.
Because I hate camping and hiking and stuff like that.
For real.
You could submarine me so bad. But okay, what do you have at 2?
My 2 is actually The Parent Trap.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. Yeah. Okay, well, my number 2, and we talked about this quite a bit off there, but my number 2 is Breakfast at Tiffany's. If you were to come into my room, you'd see I have an entire, if you were to come into my house, you'd see I have an entire wall dedicated to Audrey Hepburn in my main room. I have Funny Face and Breakfast at Tiffany's and My Fair Lady posters. And in my things I love. And those all had the same color, pink. So that's why I picked them. Not that they're my 3 favorite, but there was a long time where Breakfast at Tiffany's was my favorite movie. It really spoke to me in my 20s, this idea of these two kind of lost souls that kind of find each other through loving each other. And I just felt like Holly Golightly was such an unusual, interesting character, somebody that that really excited me in that time of my life. And that she was just solely different than anything I think I'd ever seen before. And the whole thing with like the mean reds and that that she has this backstory. And there are very few like scenes from movies that I've seen so many times, but also loved so much that I have memorized. And the whole scene in the taxi cab at the end, when he says, you know what's wrong with you? You're chicken. You got no guts. You're afraid to stick out your neck and say, life's a fact. People do fall in love. People do belong to each other. You call yourself a free spirit, a wild thing. You're terrified someone's going to put you in a cage. Well, baby, you're already in that cage. You built it yourself.
Yep.
I love that scene. And how often do we as human beings do that? We build cages for ourselves. And the kiss in the rain at the end is amazing. Moon River, absolutely love.
That
and I love the
great.
way that Moon River, the whole, like within the song it's basically the film, within that song of these two drifters off to see the world. And so that was just absolutely beautiful. And I get it. It obviously, I mean, especially Mr. Yonioshi is just embarrassing, and they all have apologized.
It's a questionable decision. Yeah, but why did even do? They knew it was wrong during the time they made this movie, and it's very questionable. Even at that point, they knew that. I don't know, but it's like, what do you expect from like old Hollywood at that point?
It's very bad, but I'm able to still enjoy the film.
Sure.
And it's one of those ones that I was just a movie that I loved in my 20s, and I still really enjoy it, even if it's not like my favorite now. But it was definitely, there was a time where, I mean, the fashion, the idea of just the quietness of Tiffany's, I think is really interesting, because you have all these party scenes that are so loud and big, but that's not where she's really happy. Where she's really happy is in the quietness of Tiffany's, and it's not about the money. It's not about and when she finds out about Fred and destroys her apartment, and that whole scene, I think it's some really good acting from Audrey. And I just so it's number 2 for me.
There are so many iconic Audrey moments in the film.
Yeah.
And she's great. I struggled with whether or not to put this one on my list. But in the end, I just don't
You have
like
to be
it.
your list. You have to be your list.
I know. I mean, because I do struggle because I always feel guilty that I don't like this movie as much because everybody I know who is into watching older movies like loves this movie. And I agree, like Audrey Hepburn's great. There's so many iconic moments in it and looks for her. But I just don't like the characters. And there's just something I also don't know. I would say this was for me. This is more like just a straight romance movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know if there's too much like I guess the way I feel when I'm watching it.
Yeah,
But-
I can see that.
And I did rewatch this most recently to make sure, whether or not I was going to end up putting it on my list. And I still kind of felt the same way as I did
Yeah.
from eons ago. But
I
yeah,
particularly
the way she treats her cat though is like,
Yeah.
come on, lady.
Oh, poor cat.
Meanwhile,
But-
my cat's looking at me like you don't treat me any better.
I
She's giving me the evil
particularly
eye.
know a lot of men who don't like this movie. And there are more men in the YouTube film space than women, like
I
by
can
far.
almost see that.
And
I see that.
I've seen it. I've seen this movie come on a lot of male overrated lists and things, and it does seem like a movie that tends to be more loved by women. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I guess I kind of do know why, but the way that his character is portrayed and his character she's the more sort of dynamic character.
But they're sort of almost the same type of person as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
Like she's doing things to get money
And
and he's doing the exact same
Yeah.
thing. So they are on
That's
very
why the
similar
song
paths.
Two Drifters Off to See the World,
You know, I am very curious to read Truman Capote's book though. I've never
Mhm.
read this one to see how it goes
it's a lot
on.
darker. I mean,
It
it's just a novella. It's a
Yeah.
short story, but
So, but
yeah.
yeah.
Well, what do you have for what's your number one?
My number one
From
is The
all-
Goodbye Girl.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because it's probably recency bias, but I just recently watched it and I just fell in love with it because I just
Mhm.
thought both of them were so funny and charming. And
It's
like I
very
could give or
sweet.
take Richard Dreyfuss like in his movies,
Right.
but I just think it's just so funny and the little kid too, like she was like a mini adult.
Yeah.
Like just reading the newspaper, giving
She's
everybody
cute.
the side eye. Yeah, it's just adorable. And this whole like, man, she had terrible taste in men. Like the whole thing about this apartment, like what a horrible situation to be put in and how they managed to do that. I just love the way they end in the rain when she's not afraid that he's not going to come back anymore. And the whole rooftop dancing and stuff. So like they only get to the romance towards the end. It's like a slow build up to it. But by then I was really rooting for them. And and then when the movie kept on going, I was like, uh-oh, what's the obstacle that's gonna come up next, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't as bad as what I thought it was gonna be. But I really enjoyed it. There was just something that I latched onto this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, for me, my number one is What's Up, Doc is my number one. It's, I think, basically a perfect film. The comedy is very, screwball, very crazy. Her character, Barbara Streisand's character, is insane. She's so weird, but she becomes like it's very similar to Bringing Up Baby. I think they're very similar, and
He
but
was inspired by that.
and
he's
and he's like this rock guy, and there's all these mixed up of the bags, and Madeline Kahn, I just die. She is absolutely hilarious in this film. And I love her so much. And it's I think the best example of how great this movie is there's a scene where there's this long set piece where these people are moving this piece of glass across the street, and you're waiting for the cars because there's been all these crazy car chases back and forth all over the city, waiting for the cars to crash into this
Yeah.
huge piece of glass. But it gets close, and then nope, and then they keep going, and then and then it keep going, and then it keeps going, and then they get all the way across, and then these happens the the glass. That's how good it would have been. So easy to just do the easy laugh, but they go a step further, and it might be my favorite. Well, Bring Up Babies is up there as well, and I love Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It would definitely, I think, be in the conversation of my favorite comedy ever made. It's so funny, in my opinion, and yeah, just what else to say?
I do remember that glass scene very, very vividly, but this is a film that I haven't watched since I was a kid, and I meant to rewatch it. I just ran out of time. Because I couldn't remember anything besides that glass scene because it's been so long, and I was like, I have to come to it again to new eyes, but I just ran out of time. But like, I know people love this movie. And
it is stressful because she's
she's
so like a mess and making his life so horrible, and and you definitely don't think that these two should be together, but like it's almost like they're gonna die if they don't get together because
right. There's it's a lot of that. I just
love Madeline Kahn.
Oh yeah, she's great.
So much. She was definitely the funniest woman to ever live. Clue, Young Frankenstein, Paper Moon. Like I know. I wish we'd had her even longer than we got her, but she's absolutely hilarious in this movie, and he like at certain points he has to pretend like he doesn't know her, and she's like
actually, now that I'm thinking about it, when he's like, "You're not interested in rocks," that just came to my mind real quick. Because yes, he's a oh wait, you're not interested in rocks. And like, no, that image just popped into my mind right now. Yeah, it's been too long since
I mean it's just kind of similar. We're Bringing Up Babies.
I have
he's the bones, he's the dinosaur person, and then he's the rocks. So if you haven't seen What's Up, Doc, it is really funny. I highly recommend it. Check it out.
Totally.
So there we go. Let's go over our list. I have Grease at 12. I have The Taming of the Shrew at 11. I have Annie Hall at 10. A New Leaf at 9. Harold and Maude at 8. The Goodbye Girl at 7. Heaven Can Wait at 6. The Slipper and the Rose at 5. Bells Are Ringing at 4. The Parent Trap at 3. Breakfast at Tiffany's at 2. And What's Up, Doc at 1.
And I've got at 12, Kiss Me Stupid. At 11, Marriage Italian Style. Number 10 is That Touch of Mink. The Taming of the Shrew I've got at 9. McLintock at number 7. I'm sorry. Blue Hawaii at number 8. McLintock at number 7. Let's Make Love at 6. Manhattan at 5. Number 4, I've got Barefoot in the Park. Number 3 is Annie Hall. The Parent Trap at number 2. And my number 1 is The Goodbye Girl.
Very good. So we did ask our patrons what their favorites were, and Becky Schomburg, she says my favorites would include Parent Trap, That Touch of Mink, The Goodbye Girl. With 6, you get Egg Roll, Bye Bye Birdie, and Fun in Acapulco. And then Alicia Lomas Gross says her faves are Harold and Maude and Annie Hall. She says What's Up, Doc is too wacky for me. And she says, don't remember my thoughts on Goodbye Girl and Barefoot in the Park. So if you want to be part of our ranking episodes, definitely become a member of the Patreon. And it's got great benefits. We have this month, our patron event is with author Elise Murray. She's been a screenwriter and author, and she's going to come talk with us. It's going to be super fun, but we have all kinds of activities. It is worth your investment to invest in the Patreon, and it helps us out a lot. So please check that out and be a part of the ranking episodes. And Terry, where can people find you?
At Twitter at Flurry Heaven.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. Also, make sure that you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all over social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. It only takes a second, and it really helps us a lot to have those 5-star reviews on iTunes. And then also, if you are listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Most of our viewers on YouTube aren't subscribers. So if you're in that camp, please subscribe. It really helps the algorithm a lot. And then we also have our patron group, as we mentioned, and the merch store. Please check that out. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.